Hello, listeners, and welcome back to a wickedly awesome episode this month. As always, I have Chris and Jordan with me, and we, of
Hello.
course, are covering Wicked, the book, and the musical, and the new movie. But, Jordan, you have invited a special guest, so please take it away and introduce who we have with us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much. I have my best friend Abby here with us. Abby and I met in college when we were, 21 years old, and we've been best friends ever since. And when we were talking about wanting to cover Wicked, I was like, who do I know who literally named her cat Nessa Rose and has seen the musical like a gazillion times? It's Abby, so I've got to invite Abby on to the show to talk about it with us since I don't think any of the rest of us have seen the stage production and she's seen it like I said a bunch of times. So it would be nice to have that expert opinion when we're talking about these three different adaptations with us. So Abby, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it. Yeah, I have seen the musical, I believe 7 times, 6 times in LA and once on Broadway, which was amazing. I did name my cats after it. So I had Nessa Rose and then Alfie. Alfie was a boy, so
I'm glad
brother
it
and
was
sister
named after the
combo.
musical and not after the book, because I would expect a armless cat if it was, named after the book. So
Exactly. Nope, she all her limbs were intact.
that's
So
good.
Well, without further ado, as we mentioned, we are covering Wicked, in that was released. It's written by Gregory Maguire, and it was released in 1995. The audiobook narrator is John McDonnell. However, much to our chagrin, Cynthia Erivo is releasing an audio version in February. So a little late for us to listen to her version, which I'm sure will help us because well, Chris, let's all talk about our relationship to the book, because listeners, if you're not aware, the book is very, very different from the play and the movie. I kind of gave up on it, and I mentioned off air that as soon as baby Elphaba bit off the finger of the nursemaid, I'm like, this is not for me. But it is much darker, and it's different. So Chris, you've read the books and all of the sequels.
Yeah, the book is a dark retelling of the story, and so it's meant to have those darker elements. But yeah, there's 4 books in the series that is the Wicked series. Son of a Witch. I think there's one about the lion and one other that I forget. And then there's a follow-up series that follows her granddaughter, who is also green, and that was interesting too. And then there's been some new things since an Elfie book that came out after last year's thing, and they just announced
Yep.
a young Glinda book, so that could be interesting too. Definitely get that backstory and keep the world going. But I've had a lot of experience with the books after the movie came out last year. I was reading them around that time, and I've watched a YouTube bootleg version of the Broadway, but that's the most I've gotten to that side.
Jordan.
Yeah, I just finished the book. It's not a kid's book. Like you can definitely take your kids to see the movies and maybe even
Hmm.
the stage production. Abby can speak more on that. Do not let your children read this book. This is an adult book that's got adult themes and adult content. There was a lot that I was like squirming in my seat when I was reading and listening to it. I had like heard that it was super different from the
Hmm.
musical and the movie, but then reading it, I was like, oh my God, I was like stunned at just how different and how adult it was. And I was not like mentally prepared for it. Like, yeah, when the baby bites the finger off, it just keeps getting crazier from there.
Right.
Like that's pretty like violence wise, that's probably one of the most like violent and gory parts of the book, but like it just gets crazier and like weirder and darker from there. So like
Hmm.
proceed with caution. Like it's good, it's interesting. It's like it's a lot more about like the politics of Oz and
Right.
like empire and oppression and even like ecology, like how progress of like building out the yellow brick road affects the climate and the animals and like the people who live in Oz. So like all of that I think is really interesting and definitely worthwhile if you're, passionate about Aussian politics. But if you're going into it expecting it to be like a cutesy friendship story about Elphaba and Glinda, that's not what you're gonna get at all.
Right. Yeah, I sort of skimmed through it, and so I do have a list of the differences, and we'll get to that sort of through our conversations. I have seen the Broadway show once, but I was either in middle school or early high school and was not as into musical theater as I am today. So I regret not paying more attention or like making that a core memory, because all I can really remember is like the opening um stage like curtain before things get started, which I believe is like like a clock, like the inside of a clock or something. And then I remembered the like Elphaba and Fiyero having a conversation about saving some animals, and like that's like all I remember of the stage production. Of course, I was a Glee nerd, so I learned more about Wicked throughout the Glee seasons and fell in love with all of the music, um, particularly Defying Gravity. But then when I started listening to the second act, I fell in love with No Good Deed. And I've seen the first film several times, and I've already seen Wicked for Good twice. So I'm really excited to talk about your experience, Abby. And you have not read the book, right?
I have read some summaries and I started it and it also kind of lost me. And I think part of that is because I obviously saw the musical first and I was trying to figure out when the first time was that I saw it, but I think I was maybe 8 or 9. And then the most recent time I saw it, I think I was 15. So it's been a little bit. But I think reading the book after or starting it or kind of getting an idea of it, I was like, "Whoa, this is so different." And so I kind of am going into it with a little bit of a bias. So I'll just um be honest about that. But it is interesting to kind of compare it to the movie and the differences and things like that. And I think one theme that I really noticed a difference in terms of the movie versus the stage production. I think the genre is still very different. Like one thing that I think makes the musical more kid friendly is it does feel more like a comedy. There is some
There
romance
was.
in it, like there's some fantasy and things like that. But you know, I think one thing that the musical fans kind of had to adjust to in the movie is that it's more um like a drama. There is the romance piece in it and it's darker overall. But like some of the like iconic lines from the stage production kind of landed a little bit different in the movie
Mm,
because the audience is laughing, you get that feedback from just being in a room versus some of those like us as the fans, we recognize those lines, but the theater's not necessarily laughing about it. It's more just like chuckling, or we like, oh, we remember that. So I think that's a big difference for me is that yeah, the musical feels much more light, like a comedy kind of, and like you don't feel, I guess, the heartbreak either as much. Kind
mm.
of towards the end and the kind of how they part ways and everything, like kind of leaves off on a more hopeful note than in the movie that I noticed. So that's just kind of some general thoughts on that. I love them
That is a
both,
good
so
point. Yeah, from what I saw on the YouTube I watched, it definitely had those comedy elements that I did not expect to see as someone who'd only read the book or watched the movies so far. So
totally.
that was
Like one
interesting.
example I'll just say, like in the very first song, and mom's giving birth to Alphaba, she comes out green, right? And it's like, oh, it's a happy, healthy little, and then it's like, oh, it's green, and then the audience like bursts out laughing. Versus in the movie, it's like, oh, she's green, oh no, and it's like, kind of more sad, or like disturbing. Um, but it's just a completely different reaction, which is kind of funny. So
Yeah.
Speaking of the film, Wicked Part 1, of course, was released last year, and Wicked for Good Part 2, which is Act 2, released this year, this November. Both movies are directed by John M. Chu. They were adapted by Stephen Schwartz, which is great because he wrote the play, and Winnie Holtzman, who they wrote the musical and the screenplay. Oh, and the musical was released in 2003. So a pretty quick turnaround from the book coming out in 95 and then the musical coming out in 03. So cultural impact. I think this might be the most kind of event movie that we've discussed on the show so far. Wicked is such a popular show, which Abby, I mean, you've seen it, what'd you say, 7 times? And you're not the only one. So, and again, like I said, it was on Glee, it's referenced all the time. Of course, it's the story of the Wicked Witch, which is from The Wizard of Oz, which is also a classic. But talk to me, you guys, about your experience with how did you like first hear about Wicked, and what did you think of like this phenomenon that Wicked has created, and even with the film and people dressing up in pink and green and all of that. And Abby, let's start with you and like your just the history with what Wicked means to you.
For
Are you a good
sure,
witch or a
yeah.
bad witch?
Yeah, like I said, I think the first time I saw it, I definitely was in elementary school, maybe like second, third grade. And timeline wise, I think the musical had probably been out maybe about 5 years at that point. I didn't know all that context when I was seeing it. Obviously, was seeing it with family and friends and things like that. And I've always loved music. Like I studied music in college, was definitely a theater kid in college, or in all through school. And so that definitely, I think, kind of shaped a lot of that for me because that was one of the first musicals that I have any kind of memory of seeing. And I think too, I do have a disability as well, and I use a wheelchair. And so the fact that having Nessa Rose, even though everyone hates that character, and I have lots of thoughts on that, um, but kind of seeing that portrayal on stage and then in the movie as well, and now in the movie the actress actually does have a disability, and uses a wheelchair in real life. So I think that kind of is a deeper level of connection for me as well. Again, unfortunate that her character kind of sucks, and I think most people hate her, but just kind of having that diversity and that representation as given it a special place in my heart as well. And then clearly I liked it, kept going back, and I think um with there being such a large gap, I guess, for me in the last time that I saw the musical, and then when these movies came out, it was interesting. Like I had mixed opinions about the movie. Like when I heard it was in production, and some of the hardcore like fans are really picky about things, but I think having Stephen Schwartz a part of it
Mhm.
really made me be like, okay, it's okay. Not that they asked me or need to ask me about it, but but I think you could tell like any changes that were made from the stage production, even if whether I agree with them or not. Like I know Stephen Schwartz and a lot of the original cast was a part of it, and so that was great. And it's really cool to see kind of a new generation of people
Mhm.
having interest in the story, and maybe not necessarily the books because the themes I feel like are pretty different. But at least kind of that friendship, like kind of the idea of good and evil. I feel like there's a lot that can be taken away from that, especially with younger kids and things. And if I was a parent, I would definitely want to have like more conversations with my kids while seeing especially part 2.
Mhm.
But the musical is very family friendly. Like obviously I saw it when I was super young. So um yeah, and then, like even in my family, I was just telling Jordan like anytime Nessa is mentioned in a song, like me having my cat named after it, like we'd just be singing the song every day, like at home. So definitely a big part of my life, and cool to see a new generation and more interest about it again.
Definitely. I didn't really have it on the radar at all until they started talking about the movie coming out, and I had some friends that were into the musical and were telling me it was great, and so I should be excited. So that's when I decided to go and read all the books before the movie came out, because I was like, I want to know what this is about, and I hear the books are worse, so I should read them first, so I don't ruin the movie for myself.
Mm.
So I got through all that. And I really enjoy the story on the book side, but you have to be willing to commit to the full story to really get enough of the context to really enjoy it. I feel like the first book is a complete story, but I feel like it gets better once you follow her son and things like that into the next book and things like that. And then
Who is the father?
of which one? Of Elphaba?
No, sorry,
Of
of her son.
um well, it's always up in the air throughout the whole thing, but everybody assumes it's Fiero.
Okay. Okay.
But she has him during her coma after he dies and all that. So she doesn't know throughout the whole thing either whose kid he is, even just someone that always has been following her around throughout the whole story after she left the monastery where she went to
Oh.
have her little mental break. So,
Yeah,
um,
she was in a
yeah,
coma, and she like he developed in utero and was born while she was in a coma, and then like she came out of the coma and then started like not even being a mother to him, because the other people in the monastery, like they're not called nuns, they're called something else. They didn't like tell her for sure that he was her kid, and so it's left very ambiguous, but also
Mm.
like you can, based on the rest of the book, you're like it's totally Fiero.
yeah. And so then I watched the movies and definitely really enjoyed the first one a lot. The songs were all very powerful and emotional. I really loved that. And the second one was still good. There was I liked the addition of Girl in the Bubble. That one was gave that character a little more depth and brought the story to its conclusion with a little more power, I think. Um, but I think the second one lacks the same way that the second half of the musical lacks a little bit on certain parts, but I do think it was a really good story altogether.
Yeah, I didn't have any exposure to Wicked really until I was in like high school. I was always like an athlete kid growing up, not like a theater kid. So I didn't know anything about Broadway or musicals. Like I had never really gone to see any shows or anything. Um, I got into Hamilton because I loved history and American history, and so I was like, oh, recommended, if you love Hamilton, we recommend you listen to Wicked. So I was like, okay. And then it was very confusing for me because I thought that all musicals were like Hamilton, where the entire story is told through song. And so then I listened to Wicked and I was like, I don't understand what's happening right now. I don't know who's talking, like who's who, what's like, I was just very lost. And then it dawned on me like, oh, there's probably some speaking parts through here that I'm missing context from.
That would make
um
sense. Same
yeah, and
political
so
tones, though.
yeah. And so then, being friends with Abby and her being so into it, I was like, well, when I heard the movie came out, I was like, oh, perfect. Now I can finally have a conversation with her about it and actually know what the heck she's talking about and what's going on. And so we saw it together in theaters last year, and then that was pretty much it because I'm just still not like it's not something that like sticks with me that much like in my soul the way that I think it does to Abby and to a lot of other people. So I didn't dive into the books like you did, Chris. I didn't like really get into it and like this is my new thing. I was like, yeah, it was good. And then I'll just wait for the next one, and then yeah. And now I do a podcast, and so then I read it and that was it. So yeah.
I need to be able to push up my glasses and say, well, actually, that in the book they didn't do it that way. They did it this way, and so I have to have that thrown on my friend's face when I need to talk about the movie. So
Yeah. Which is hard to do because there's not that much. We'll talk about it later, but there's not that much from the
yeah,
book that happens in the musical and the movie. So
you have
to
to
be able to
describe the
do
whole
that at
scene to
all
do
is
it.
good.
Yeah,
So let's
definitely.
dive into the cast now. And of course, we'll start with Elphaba Throp, who Indina Menzel brought her to life on Broadway. And in the movie, she is played by Cynthia Erivo. Um, So, what are your thoughts on, how Cynthia kind of brought this character to life?
I think it was great. I didn't know much about her before this. Since this came
Same.
out, I kind of have a little I got a little bit more exposure to her, career and music and everything like that. I think it worked really well. Obviously, there's no one like Adina or Kristen Chenoweth, which we'll get to. But I love how much she and Ariana respected the role, and
Mm.
respected, I guess, what came before. From a musical standpoint, I have opinions on like little riffs that were added, but this isn't a music show, so I won't go too much into that. But overall, I think she did really well, and I think you could really see the difference I get with any movie versus a stage production is that you can really see the character's facial expressions more, versus in music, on a stage, people are looking through binoculars to try to see, but everything has to be really big and exaggerated. And
Mhm.
so, there's a lot of the nuance that we don't always get. But I think Cynthia did a great job. And like I always cry every time in the Ozda's ballroom scene when they're dancing and you see
Mhm.
the tears fall. I'm like, I know it's coming. I still cry every time, but I just think she did a great job. And also, kind of like I said at the beginning, I feel like the change in genre, I guess, from the stage production to the movie, I think she did really well with that, kind of having a deeper emotional side to the role. And you could really kind of see that internal struggle, which you could kind of guess on the stage production, but you don't really get it as much as you do in the movie. So I think it was a great choice.
And I believe that moment at the Ozdas ball was unscripted. I think she was just overwhelmed with
Yeah.
emotion, and Ariana didn't know she was gonna cry and looked over and wiped her tear away, and it is a very beautiful moment.
Mhm. Yeah, I heard that as well. Like, so good.
Yeah, they really gave their all for those roles.
Mhm.
Yeah, and she definitely can hit a lot of the notes they needed for the music to make sure it was,
Mhm.
really bold and big. I think that for the context of the show to have a black woman playing the role too was a really interesting choice to give that, because that a lot of this is comes down to a picture of racism through the eyes of the animals being the oppressed race, I feel like. And so this green girl also gets affected by that, and you take all that away, she still in our world would have had some issues possibly. So I think that was a really interesting choice, and I appreciate it a lot.
Just
Miss
a
Ma'am
comment
can
on that. I'm so
sing.
sorry.
No, you're fine.
But
I didn't have much to add other than what you guys said, but Miss Ma'am can sing. She
Oh
She
yeah.
can
can.
it's true.
sing, and so like that was really cool because again, I have never seen the musical, and so I've only ever listened to like on Spotify like the original Broadway production, and I'm like I still generally prefer Adina and Kristen, but like they really, really are top notch performers, Cynthia and Ariana. And it's like if anybody else had to play those roles, I'm glad it was the two of them.
Same.
Hmm.
And
Totally agree.
Cynthia is one away from an EGOT. She has the Emmy,
Hmm.
the Grammy, and the Tony, and maybe getting the Oscar this year. We'll see. I think they were snubbed last year, so we'll see what they
Hopefully.
can round up this year. And speaking of Glinda, you can't have Elphaba without Glinda. Of course, Kristen Chenoweth brought her to life on the stage, but Ariana Grande brought her to life in the film. And I have to admit, I was not an Ariana Grande fan. And when I heard that she got cast, I was like, "Oh, what? No way." Um, she's a pop star, and then the thing with the donut had come out, and like it was just all of this stuff. Oh, and then like I don't know, all kinds of scandals around Ariana, right? And but after the press tour for the first movie and interviews with John saying he even didn't want to even audition her because she was a pop star, but she worked her butt off and impressed him, and he ended up casting her. And then I saw her performance in the first film, and I'm like, okay, sold. Ariana, you've got me on your team now.
She accomplished the character well. She had the right feel for this entitled girl who has to
Mhm.
learn to experience life differently throughout this story. And from what I understand, she saw the Broadway when she was young and had said, "Someday I want to play that role." And now she got her chance, and it was wonderful there to see that too.
Yeah, she actually met Kristen
Hmm.
backstage. I don't know if she had like won something or what the story is, but she had met her and told her, I think, that she wanted to be Glinda, and so they had a lot of emotional moments when she got the role.
And then just to shout out that they did have Dina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth in the role of the singers of the, what do they call it, the Emerald City
The
players
players, yeah.
in the thing. That was great to see them have a role in the film.
Hmm.
So I
I
appreciated that.
love when the live action stuff, like even Disney is doing it when they kind of like pass the torch.
Hmm.
And yes, I think both Mulan and Little Mermaid had a passing the torch, and so I don't think you could have had this movie come out and not have them have a small cameo in some way.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I almost wanted to see them back in the second film, but there wasn't really any spot
Same,
for
me
them.
too.
So
I
No.
I disagree. I think it was good that they weren't in the second, so that way I think it would have been a distraction, especially
Yeah.
me like not having seen it before and not having any previous experience of like what was going to happen next. Like I could see that it would have been a distraction for me if they had showed up, cuz then now I'm thinking like, "Oh, that was so cool that they brought them back," instead of like focusing on what's happening. But maybe that's just me and my brain.
No, I agree with you because part two is a lot more action. Like the story is the part one is all about the introduction and getting the ball rolling and kind of, you know, working up to the climax. And part two is so fast paced that I think you're right. Like, if they had, there's no way to bring those characters back. Like, they couldn't be other characters. They would have to be those actors, and where would they fit into part two? They just
yeah,
wouldn't.
it wouldn't, but it would have been fun
Yeah.
still to see
Yeah.
him like in the crowd or something that was the mob going after her or something, or somewhere you could have made it work. But I agree that it wasn't necessary. It just would have been kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did have the Wicked One Wonderful Night in a performance.
Hmm.
And they had one section of it where both Kristen, Adina, Cynthia, and Ariana went back to the Gershwin
The
Theater, and
stage.
then Stephen Schwartz was playing the
Yes.
piano, and they sang For Good, and they kind of changed up the lyrics to the bridge a little bit, and so all four of them were there singing that together. So I know that's
Yes,
kind
it
of
was
like
beautiful.
aside from the movie and everything, but that was kind of like the little nod, I feel like. It kind of scratched that itch for me. I'm like, "Oh, okay, they're all singing it together."
Yeah,
So yeah, that
and the
part was
fact
great.
they've
But I
stayed
agree.
friends
It
in
was,
there,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
That was a really good production too. I've watched that, of course, and I really loved that production. They did a good job with that.
Mhm. For sure.
Okay, so let's move on to let's do Nessa Rose next, who is Elphaba's sister, and she is played by Marissa Bode in the movie. And again, I don't really have a memory of her character from the play, and I don't think like she has any songs on the soundtrack, as far as I know. Um, so I really didn't have any you know, thoughts on her, but I thought she was a great actress, and like we mentioned earlier, she is in a wheelchair, so they changed her storyline a little bit with the spell in act 2. But Abby, what did you think of her performance?
Yeah, I think she was great. Again, I love when they have a character, portraying a disability who has a disability.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not always possible depending on the plot. I have maybe mixed feelings on how they changed it a little bit in the movie. So, in the stage production, she does kind of get up and walk. And so probably why they didn't cast somebody with a disability for that. Versus in the movie, she's kind of floating. And that's what the effect of the shoes or the spell
Mhm.
or whatever you want to attribute that to. So I appreciate that as well because I think the Marissa might have some kind of ambulation, but maybe not so much. And so that adaptation I think was good. It was a little different. I think it gives a different meaning to it. Like I was just talking to Jordan about it last night. Like um the implication in the stage production was that, once she got the ability to walk, she could kind of continue to walk. Versus in the movie, you see her kind of wheeling again, and like wheeling when she's searching for Bach. And
Right.
so just kind of a little difference in the implication, but I don't think it's necessarily good or bad. And then I do love that the Wicked Witch of the East is the kind of the main song that she sings, but the original doesn't have that as part of the soundtrack. And I think I heard that it's because there's spoilers in it or something. I don't know if that's true, but that song doesn't really make it into the original soundtrack, and that's where that bootleg version really came in handy for the for the
Right.
hardcore fans who wanted to listen to that part again.
Mhm.
But overall I think she did a great job in the role, and like I've seen lots of people online saying like she was fantastic, like I hated her so much, she did a great job at
It's
portraying
me.
that. So yep, yeah,
It's
yeah.
me. I'm the people online saying that.
And what's nice is they also cast, if I read that right, a disabled kid as the younger version of her too. It
Yes.
was not
Yeah,
Mhm.
just the adult; it was all, both were parts of the role were kept consistent there, and that's
for
great.
sure. Appreciated that as well. And I know that's was surprising for me to learn in the book that the disability was completely different. Um, and I mean, for those that really went into the book, I don't know if you have thoughts on that change and how that impacts the storyline. For me, I think it's interesting that it's kind of like the legs versus the arms.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if you have
I
thoughts
think
on that.
it's I think as far as like adapting it, because the way it's described in the book is that she was born with no arms. So not that she has arms, but she can't use them. Just they aren't even there.
Which would definitely
So
make balance more difficult, even if you could walk. So,
absolutely.
and I think that's
But
why I say it was.
yeah, I think like as far as like adapting it to a visual production, it's a lot easier to portray a disability when you can say like, okay, just like sit in a wheelchair
Mhm.
versus finding somebody who like doesn't have arms and then you want to do the spell where now she gets use of her limbs back. How do you, if you do find somebody that can sing and act and can perform and doesn't have arms, like how do you show that they get them back, or like how do you hide arms throughout the whole production? Like I
Mhm.
just think it would like it came down to like logistics where it was easier to say let's change it to a leg thing. She can sit in a wheelchair and then now she can walk once the shoes get spelled and just I just think it was literally just logistics. Like it just was easier to do it that way.
Yeah, it came from
Fair.
the play side of it where they really couldn't have someone
Mhm.
fill that role very easily. And yeah, the shoes were enchanted to allow her to balance in the book, and it just was easier
Mhm.
to, in this case, do it this way, I think. And I appreciate that. The more interesting part of the book about her is the fact that it seems like who we think is Elphaba's dad has like no parentage over any of them, it seems like. And so she is technically Turtleheart's kid, we're pretty sure, based on the context of
Mhm.
the book. So,
Mm.
along with their brother, too, it seems to be that way.
Uh, yeah. Okay, so Nessa Rose is in love with Bach, and he is played by Ethan Slater in the film. And I thought he did a good job playing Bach.
Yeah, his turn towards the end was really interesting and a little bit off-putting, and that was kind of perfect for that role. And
Mhm.
you're like, I don't get why you're so angry, but okay.
Well, I don't get why you're so angry at Alphaba, but
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. That's what I
Like,
mean. And then I just saw a thing today where they were comparing the original Wizard of Oz, dancing around and just being the lighthearted Tin Man to Bach's like anger and
Yeah.
his
well,
character there.
in the book, like it's so different, but like it's repeated throughout the end. Once we finally get to the part where Dorothy is in Oz, everybody's like, she's just a child. She's so innocent. She's so sweet. Like we must protect her. We must like we have to take care of her. We can't let anything bad happen to this child. And so I think like that's how I'm kind of like headcanoning the like how he gets from this raging tin man who wants to kill the witch, and he's singing a whole song about how he wants to kill the witch, to yeah, if I only had a heart, like that kind of a thing. Like, it's because it seems like wherever Dorothy goes in Oz, everybody is like, no, we have to take care of her, we have to protect her like mental health and her like physical health and her safety becomes paramount. And so if you got to keep it to yourself and like hide your true motives to let her feel like she's with safe companions on her journey, then that's what you got to do. So that's how I've kind of like headcanon that, because it is a really big difference.
Well, and you also have to think of like unreliable narrators too. So the Wizard of Oz is from Dorothy's perspective, and like you said, she's a very naive, innocent child, and so
Hmm.
she's probably like, "Oh, these three people are here to help me, and they're so lovely and kind." And then Wicked is from Elphaba and Glinda's perspective, and when she's looking down in the movie at Bach saying, "Let's go get the witch," and so it's from her perspective, and this is her best friend, almost like the love of her life, and this guy, everybody, the whole town is against her right now, so she might be seeing him as more evil than There's three sides to every story, so what's actually happening in that moment? And there's probably like a middle ground of who Bach is.
True.
Yeah,
In the fourth
absolutely.
book, Dorothy comes back to Oz, and she gets basically put on trial. So as a
Oh.
villain. So yeah,
Oh.
Hmm.
Wild. Yeah, I think his portrayal was really good. That scene, like I was telling Jordan too, like where he turns into the Tin Man, like always kind of gives me the creeps. Like it totally did in the stage production too. Like it's like the lighting changes, like there's silence, and then you just hear the creaking, and you like see his arm, like tin arm, like go over the couch or whatever, and it's like, oh,
Wow.
and I got that same feeling again seeing the movie, and it was even I kind of even more because he's like breaking through the door and like looks like he's gonna kill
a little bit of
Nessa Rose,
shining,
which
shining
some in
Yeah.
this
moment
room
there.
might have
Yeah.
said justified, yeah, but but yeah, definitely really, I mean, it did what it was supposed to do.
Hmm.
But that's one part where I'm like, don't know if you might want to cover the kids' eyes for that part. But I mean, looked great. Yeah, I think you're
Technically,
right. I know
Elphaba
there's
was saving his
controversy.
life because her sister had just
Mhm.
took away his heart. So it
Yeah,
was
Yeah, but
interesting
then
that
Absolutely.
she
she's
turns the
her.
blame on to Elphaba, so
totally.
he's
Hmm.
just like, and he's already I don't he already has, he's following the townspeople where
Mhm.
they're all like Elphaba bad. So he's like, yeah, Elphaba bad. And so he totally is willing to believe Nessa Rose that it was her fault, not Nessa Rose's fault. So
Hmm.
Hmm.
he just has a lot of anger. He was just turned into a tin man, and he has a lot of anger and resentment towards Nessa Rose for keeping him in Munchkinland. And Elphaba just is his escape from that. He can
Hmm.
channel all that anger into finding and hunting her down.
Which kind of is Elphaba's plot throughout the whole movie is everybody blames her as the villain that you have to give the people a good villain was the wizard's takeaway from living in the United States at some point before.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Hmm.
So we're gonna jump up to Fiero. I feel guilty leaving him this far down the list. Um, Jonathan Bailey, sexiest man alive.
So
Sexiest
true.
scarecrow alive.
Sexiest
Amen.
scarecrow alive.
Yes.
I thought he nailed it. But Abby, what is your opinion of his portrayal of Fiero?
So good. Literally could not have been a better choice. I can't think of a single person. It's like and seeing Bridgerton too,
Oh yeah.
and kind of having that perspective and then going into this, it's kind of like he and in the stage production too, it's like Fiero's character, like the goal is for everyone to fall in love with him, like or not the goal, but that's just kind of what happens. And just his charisma and yeah, I just think Jonathan Bailey was perfect for that. It's like, hey, even the old librarian like
Yeah.
was feeling it with him. So I think he did great. It was it was cool to see, his singing ability as well. I think he, did kind of release some music before this
Hmm.
as well. So that's kind of interesting. I haven't listened to it yet, but Um, I think he did a great job of doing exactly what he's supposed to do. I think both Jordan and I were saying like, oh, there was a minute there where like, I wish this wasn't PG-13. Um, but at the same time, it is a kids movie. That's another part where if I had kids, I'd be like, okay, cover your eyes for this part. But I think he did great. There's some, I was really trying to pay attention, like how much the chemistry was portrayed, like during
Mhm,
part one, between Fiera and Glinda versus Fiera and Alphaba. Because I feel like in the stage production, you don't get as much of that. It seems more of like a drastic shift.
yeah.
Like you kind of get a sense of it. But I think again, like I was saying earlier, when it's in a movie format, you can really see like those facial expressions. Like you can kind of get an idea of that internal struggle a little bit more. And so I kind of liked what I always love more Jonathan Bailey content. Yes, for sure. But I liked how there was kind of little things kind of throughout part one, and then I'm for sure the beginning of part two to show that. I ended up feeling way more sympathy for Glinda this time. Um, when seeing that versus the stage production, and like how devastated she actually was that he, chose Elphaba. Like I didn't get that emotion at all when watching the
Mm,
stage production, because it's like yay, and like we're all like, oh well, he didn't like you anyway, but you kind of don't see how much Glinda actually really cared about him. Did she care about him for him or just the idea of him? Like,
mhm.
toss up. But um, you could really see how devastated she was that the wedding didn't happen, and then also kind of that betrayal from her best friend. But it's like, and they didn't even really have a whole conversation about that, but in Forget they're like, oh yeah, we forgive each other, and it's all okay, which we love, like girl power, over over
That's because there
the
was
over the
far
boys.
too much chemistry between Elphaba and Glinda.
Oh yeah,
They were the ones that were meant to end up together at the end of that movie, and
for
they
sure.
got robbed by this Fiero guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
In the
exactly.
book, Fiero isn't with Glinda at that point. I believe there's some other person in Oz that she's engaged to or married to, and lives in his castle with his wife and his kids, and comes into town and has the affair with Elphaba there while he's on business there. And so
Does he have an affair with Glinda too?
I
No,
don't think so.
no.
Okay.
Just
Him and
Elphaba.
Glinda are never together in the book.
Yeah.
Bach and Nessa are never together in the book.
Mm,
And Nessa is not like super fixated on Bach, where she's like trying to cast spells on him. Like that whole like subplot line doesn't happen. Um, the like love triangle arrow thing doesn't really happen because Glinda just like she likes Fiero, and like her and Fiero and Elphaba all kind of like each other, but then Elphaba like drops out of school and goes and disappears and goes into hiding, and then everybody else like grows up and graduates and goes and marries other people.
And I believe that
Um
Fiero was already engaged or already married as well when he was going to school too. So it was
mm.
like because of the country he lived in, didn't that's what he
yeah,
was already betrothed as the prince. So
yeah,
yeah, it was a difference there for sure. I think that for the musical and the movie, it makes a lot of sense to have the love triangle and the all that together. But it definitely
yeah,
was a huge change when you're like, wait, this isn't right.
yeah, absolutely. Well, and I really love Jonathan Bailey. Like again, like I've watched him in Bridgerton, and the more I see him, I'm like, this dude's a great actor. Like he really
Jurassic
like
Park or
Agreed.
Jurassic
he
World
Jurassic Park,
recently,
yeah, like he
those
really
sexy little
makes you
glasses,
Slutty little
amen.
glasses.
slutty little glasses. That's
Amen.
it. Yeah.
Like he just makes you feel everything that he's feeling. Like he reminds me a lot of like Sebastian Stan, and how Sebastian Stan has been like really widely regarded for his performance as the Winter Soldier, like conveying so much with just his eyes, and like
Mhm.
just the way he looks at Elphaba, and then like you can really tell how much he really really deeply cares for her. He puts his life on the line for her. He's willing to fight and to die for her, and that kind of like that performance, like I really believe it. I believe every second of it that he is here for her and he loves her. Um so
Seeing For Good for the second time, I was really paying attention to the scene where he came back, and so right after Glinda and Elphaba's fight, and he's holding Glinda at gunpoint. Um, you can totally see the pain that he's going through holding her at gunpoint because he does care about her and he does love her, but he also wants Elphaba to be free. And then, Glinda says he was never going to hurt me, and it's true. And like having that gun pointed to her even pained him. And like you said, you can totally see that in his eyes. They really zoom in on that, and like you can see the gun is like shaking, like he does not want to do this.
I don't
And it
understand
is
how
very
those guns
heartbreaking
work, though.
performance.
It looks like it doesn't have a way to shoot even.
I
So
Those
know.
are
I was trying
weird
to figure
guns.
it out. Like, what is
Yeah.
Like
this?
I'm not seeing a barrel here. There's nowhere for a bullet to come out of. What is going on? But
I was like, is it
whatever.
backwards? Like,
right,
are they using
because that's what I
Yes,
was
it
thinking.
does
That's
Yeah,
look
very confusing.
does
backwards.
he even know how to use a gun?
Really cool
um,
prop design. Just not doesn't make a lot of sense.
it felt very Aussian, but that was the problem. It's like you're
Yeah,
looking at it like,
exactly.
what?
For sure. Well, that
um,
whole sequence is something that doesn't it happens so fast in the stage production. So you don't really get all of those layers.
Mm.
Like when, he turns it on Glinda and everything. I think it's more just like a moment of shock and then goes straight into like escaping and then getting arrested and all of that. So that I loved how much they were able to expand on that in the movie to show, and again, like another example of how much Glinda like really felt for him. It's like, yeah, if you're being held at gunpoint too, that's traumatic, but then when it's somebody that you were just engaged to a second ago, like that's a whole other layer that I don't feel like we really got in the stage production.
Mhm.
being told you're getting married on stage in front of a bunch of people kind of feels like being held at gunpoint too, I'm sure.
Fair, fair.
I mean, yeah.
All right, so let's get into some more of our other characters. The wizard, the man himself, is played by Jeff Goldblum.
He just loves weird little
He
wizard
does.
roles.
He
He's
also
so good
likes,
at them though. He's
he
getting
gets
like
to be the
typecast.
yep, the
Yes.
Thor Ragnarok moment. He
The
was on
Grandmaster,
a
yeah.
Grandmaster.
Grandmaster
Yes.
over a planet with a blonde guy and a green guy again. Same story basically right
Mhm.
there.
I mean,
No, it's funny. I saw an interview with him too. I think it was him and Jonathan Bailey, and like they were explaining some part of the plot. And then he was like, "Oh, really?" Like he didn't,
He
it was
didn't
like
watch it.
brand new information, and they're like already done filming. It's like he's totally learning about the plot, like
Well, I
as
saw a
he's
moment where
going.
he was learning about the
That's funny.
sexiest man alive thing, and he didn't
That
realize
too.
the
Yeah.
part about Jonathan Bailey being a gay man getting it was a much bigger
Yes, I
thing
saw
than
that
Oh,
clip.
he even
right.
noticed. It was like,
Yeah.
oh, right, yeah, I forgot about that part even, which kind of just made me think he's just not worried about that stuff at all, and was like, you're
Hmm.
just perfect for this
He's
role.
just dancing through life,
Yep.
like he.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the song he was added to with the or the Ariana was added to with him, the one and the second one here? They did the what's that one? I forget the
Wonderful.
Wonderful. What did you think of the
Yeah.
three of them being a part of that one instead of
I
just the
think
two?
I think it was good because I mean, we know Jeff is not known for his singing,
Hmm.
um, respectfully. So I think it was a nice addition, like musically, but then also plot wise. Like I've seen comments like in the musical, it makes more sense to have, or it makes less sense that Elphaba would be swayed by him, like him alone,
Mm.
but then having Glinda also there,
Yeah,
like you can kind of see her thinking about it and envisioning it a little bit, and then like eventually she snaps out of it. But I think it made it a little bit more believable that she was falling for it, to have her
definitely.
in it.
I liked it because that is one that I always skipped on the original recording. Sorry, original recording
Fair.
guy. But it's definitely my like one of my least favorite songs of the musical. But having Ariana be a part of it makes it a lot more tolerable. Everything in addition to what you just said, Abby, with her being more w- um being more able to convince
It
Alphabet.
sh-
I don't think it would make sense if it was just the wizard alone.
it also shows the way out or the way that Glinda is being used as the tool of the wizard a little bit, and
Mhm.
kind of that
Yeah,
too.
good point.
We might have to start a Jeff Goldblum tally for our podcast. We've got Jurassic Park. We've got this one. We'll have to
Yeah,
tally up all the Jeff Goldblums we get to over the time.
definitely.
He's everywhere.
Can we start one for Jonathan Bailey too, or is it only Jeff
Yeah,
Goldblum?
I mean, I've done Bridgerton already,
Oh, that's
so
true.
we
Yeah,
can, yeah.
yeah. We'll have to.
We'll
We'll
keep like
tally up
who's
our
been in the
actors.
most
Yeah,
adaptations.
Yeah.
king of the adaptations eventually.
There
Love
you
that.
go.
So Madame Morrible is next on the list, and she is played by their wonderful, beautiful Michelle Yao.
The biggest problem people have had with her that I've seen online, I didn't really bump
Mm.
into it, but is that her singing voice isn't there for the role very much. But I think it worked for the character she was playing just fine.
She in the book she's always described as very fish-like, so I'm like, well, you guys did not nail that because Michelle Yeoh is stunning and
That's fair.
not fishy at all. So that's failed casting, but
Well, then in the book, I think Elphaba also kills her, so
yeah.
goes back and like brutally murders her. So
Mm.
Mhm.
In one of the counter arguments I saw to her singing voice is that when she's conjuring the tornado that brings Dorothy, you could really see her like martial arts kind of in the choreography.
Mm.
And that not everybody could do that. And like
that's fair.
visually, when again we're talking about the movie is close up, you need somebody that can do something unique with their body and their arms.
That doesn't look like
And
they're
that was the
conjuring a spell.
kind of counter argument. But I thought that she sounded fine. You know, it's not like she has to belt anything out. It's a lot of the songs are more of like a speaking kind of voice, so I thought it was fine. But Abby, what was your experience?
I think if it was acting alone, I think she was great. Fantastic. The singing, like when I go back and I listen to the soundtrack, it does kind of take me out of it a little bit, especially on like The Wizard and I. Like initially I was like, is this in the right key? Like what's going on? And then it's just I mean, they adapted it a little bit for her and the range. So I mean, the nitpicky part of me is like maybe we could have done a little bit more training or like a couple
Mhm.
more takes or something. Um but you know, just because it is a musical and we know that like that's what we're coming for. But similar to Jeff Goldblum, it's like, you know, that wasn't really the point of their role specifically.
Right.
Kind of
Exactly.
more of that, you know, the dialogue, like aspect of the line, the content of what they were singing, was more important for that. But I do think her character, again, very different than the stage production, and they actually split that role um, into two. So the um, yeah, so Madame Morrible versus I think it's Miss Coddle. Um, so there's kind of like the head sorceress, and then there's kind of like the headmaster or like shizstress kind of a thing. So in the stage production, that's one character, and so it's not like huge. It didn't make a huge difference, but I think it is helpful to kind of see that split of like, okay, she's focusing on the magic side of it versus like the other character, which a shame that they didn't have her sing because she's
Right.
fantastic vocalist and everything. But having her be kind of more of that like Dean kind of character, I think it was helpful so that Madame Morrible could be you could go more into depth about her and like her role and everything. So it's an interesting change there. But I think overall, I think she was a great choice, like, really just having that I think cold is kind of the impact that
Mm.
it had, and, like, calculated, like, I think she did a really good job at conveying that.
Yeah. I think both Madame Morrible and the Wizard, their roles singing wise are small enough that you can afford to have people who are maybe not the best singers in those roles, but the screen time they have and the like weight and the work that they have to do of like selling that they are like dangerous people who you don't want to mess with them and they have this power, like you really need some heavy hitter actors in those roles. And so I think like unless you pull somebody directly off of like Broadway who like their whole thing is carrying that weight acting wise and singing, like unless you get somebody with like maybe a lesser known name in that role, then this is probably the best we were going to get with trying to balance the singing and the acting that you had to get.
Hmm.
Totally.
Yeah. Let's wrap up our cast with Dr. Dillamond, played by Peter Dinklage. Or I should say, voiced by Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, just look
That's
a little
fair. I mean,
scraggly.
they didn't have a goat in the stage production, so that's a difference. But I think that's cool, and that's one of the things that having it be an actual movie, like you have the freedom to actually show that, and not just kind of like a dude wearing a goat mask
Mhm.
on the stage production. And so I think that really allowed for more freedom with the animal storyline too. Like you could really um kind of immerse yourself in that aspect of it because they were actual animals and not just like half people, half animal situation.
Mhm.
So I know Something Bad is another one that gets skipped a lot of the time, and I get it.
I love that song.
But I do
This
I
like
actually really
soundtrack, I
like
really
that
enjoyed
one.
it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
No, I liked it too in this version, and I think having almost like a union meeting, like where you see all the other animals is something that we don't really get in the stage production either. Like really the only animals we see are Dr. Dillamond, we get the monkeys and we get the lion, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
So I like kind of the range. You kind of get a better sense of the demographic of Oz too.
The depth
Um,
of the
that
world,
was a
yeah.
little bit hard to grasp, I feel like, in the stage production.
Yeah, and that
It
I think that's a good like happy medium because the so much of the book is focused on like Elphaba's crusade to free the animals and like give them their rights, and like there's a lot of research being done onto what makes a lowercase a animal versus a capital A animal, and like
Mhm.
spirit and speaking
sentience and all
and
that,
the
yeah.
sentience and souls, and like there's a lot of conversation about that in the book, that like when you have to condense a story down into a 2.5 hour stage production or 2.5 hour movies, like you can't get into all those finer details. So being able to have a film where like you can have, in my opinion, really good CGI for a goat and for all these other animals to like show that there is more of this stuff happening behind the scenes without like straying too far from like the main story that we're focusing on, I think is a good happy medium between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really well done balance, and his office had all those really cool mobiles that I enjoyed, and yeah, as he's doing that song, so the yeah, it gave us that feeling of the animal problem without, brutally murdering him like they do in the book as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It gave me some Narnia
Yeah.
vibes too.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When they had that, especially that scene where you see his office, and I was like, I'm seeing Mr. Tumnus a little bit for some reason, like all the contraptions with the tea and everything. But yeah,
Even some of the
and
trees are on Oz's side.
right, right. I think it's interesting too. Another animal character, like the nanny slash Dulcibert, like that was not really in the stage production at all. Like, kind of, there is a nanny or like a midwife kind of character there, like for the birth, but not named and not
Mhm.
like a recurring character at all. So that was kind of interesting to kind of include that, and then also have her come back again in part
The
2.
second part, yeah.
Yeah.
The birth scene also had the wolf there, which would have been colorblind,
Mhm.
so they wouldn't have known that she was green.
That's funny. Yeah, and then the nanny character in the book is just a human, and so I
A
think
long, long-lived human.
yes, I think the change to making the nanny figure an animal works because it kind of gives Elphaba more of a reason why she cares so much about the animals, because she was,
Mhm.
especially because both of her parents like hated her because she was green and didn't love her and didn't want her, and so she was like raised almost exclusively by Dulcibert, and so like having her have that familial connection with an animal that who raised her and was her mother basically for her whole
Mhm.
life, like it makes a lot more sense why when Dr. Dillamond is mistreated at Shiz and while all the other animals are being mistreated throughout Oz by the wizard and his like campaign against them, like it makes a lot more sense why she feels so strongly about it besides like her natural moral code that she has. It gives
Mhm.
like that emotional depth to it as well. So I thought that was a good change.
Totally agree.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about characters? Do you want to touch base on any of the characters that were cut from the book, or do we kind of want to wrap up
The time
the
dragon
conversation?
storyline is a really interesting part of the book that we don't get any of, other than like the comments about a clock's tick is a comment you hear. But the time dragon has a big portion of the book being like they'll pop up here and there as like a prophetic interpretation of people's lives throughout, and they're like a religion in the system. But they are the ones they reveal her true parentage being the wizard to her towards the end of the of part of it, and there was just it was an interesting contraption that I would have liked to. I mean, I don't see any way it really would have fit into the story, but I really liked it in the book. Yeah, that was one that I really liked.
Yeah, I think the exposure that I've gotten to the book recently kind of made some things made that piece make a little bit more sense from the movie and the stage production. Not that it was in there very much, but like in the stage production, like part of the set is like this huge dragon that's kind of above the stage. And like looking back at that, I'm like, what is that for? Or like they
Yep,
reference the clock being like the dragon clock time or something like that. And
yeah,
so that just kind of, I mean, it's small enough to where you wouldn't really notice it. Like I didn't really put that together until again I, heard that it was a big point in the book. So yeah, kind of interesting how that was like it's in there just a little bit to like kind of maybe reference the book. But not that much. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. It's hard without like getting too deep into like all the various plot
Right.
differences to talk about the characters that were omitted, but like we've kind of touched on like Fiyero had a whole wife and 3 kids that because they fundamentally changed the plot of the romance between him and Elphaba and Glinda, those people don't exist anymore. They're just
Mhm.
straight up gone. Elf in the book, Elphaba and Nessa Rose have a little brother who is gone. He's not even in the book that much. I think he's like referenced by name multiple times, but I don't know. I forget if Elphaba even like interacts with him in the book.
barely. Yeah,
So that's a super small role. And then like Shiz is an all girls school, and then there's an all boys school next door. And so like Bach has a bunch of friends that him and Fiero like spend time with that are not that aren't in the movie, and I don't think are in the book at all, because they just made Shiz a co-ed university from the get-go, versus it becomes a co-ed university because the wizard is saying that animals cannot be professors. And so during this course of the book, like while Elphaba and Glinda are at Shiz, the animals are being taken out of their positions, and then they're forced to hold classes together with the boys from the school next door. So like all of Bach's friends that he makes on his own, like they're gone, and Glinda's little like followers, who they're more of like mean girls, like the 3 of them are kind of mean girls, and they actually kind of pick on Glinda a little bit, but like those characters still exist. That's Bowen Yang's character, and I forget the other girl's name, but like those two just become like sycophants for Glinda, and like quite literally like her personal assistants and doing whatever she wants. So just those kinds of the changes that are made in the characters are all directly results of them changing the plot from the book into these other various productions. So, but we'll talk more about that later.
Yes.
in the later books, Shelthrop, her little brother, becomes basically the successor to the wizard. So he is a
Ooh.
bigger
Mm,
character in the books, but that's not till later.
interesting.
All right. Well, Abby, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again in the next episode. Listeners, thank you for joining us. And if you have any thoughts or comments on what we discussed, please let us know. Join the Facebook group, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching books with us.
Thank you.
Bye. That's a wrap for today's episode of Book Watch. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the world of page-to-screen adaptations. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, review wherever you listen to podcasts, and share it with your fellow book and movie lovers. If you'd prefer to watch along, you can check the show out on YouTube. You can follow the show on Instagram at Bookwatch Podcast, and you can follow me, Sarah Day, on Instagram at captain.mcdee. That's MCDEE. You can also join the conversation in the Bookwatch Lounge on Facebook at www.facebook.com/groups/bookwatchlounge. If you would like to support the podcast, you can join the Patreon at www.patreon.com/bookwatchpodcast. Tiers start at only $4 a month, and I'd love to have you over there. If you have a favorite adaptation you'd like to cover with me, I'd love for you to apply to be on the show with the contact form on our website at www.bookwatchpodcast.com. Until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and I'll see you next week.